one main thing I would say, and the basis of all that I'm saying here is that we have to begin to ask questions, be more curious, stop being solutions oriented. And so, there's this saying, which is strong opinions held loosely. All that is curiosity over conclusions.
Yo, Carl, what's up, buddy?
Shawn, how you been, man? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. How's your week been, man?
It's bittersweet, man. At first I was excited. The kids are to school and I'm just like, oh, can't wait to get them to school. They're gone and it's quiet and it's me and my wife and then we're just working and then the house is quiet again. So I don't know. It's cool, but it's also just like, wow, it's just quiet after I think almost 2 years. So
yeah,
it's kind of odd.
I hear that. Yeah, we just put our son this morning on the bus. He's in school this year, senior kindergarten. So yeah, definitely. I hear what you're saying. It's nice to have the quiet time in the day as I go through that experience. So yeah, man, that's wicked.
Yeah.
And wanted to take a minute and just again say hello to our audience out there. Happy Friday, everybody. I hope everyone is doing fantastic. Thanks again for joining a brand new episode of As Is To Be. I am your co-host, Shawn Acheampong.
I'm also your co-host, Reid, but go by Creed.
Right on. And you know how we do. We love transformation. We love hearing people's stories. We love looking at transformation unplugged and exploring the many talents of people and guests and people from around the world. And so without further ado, we have an amazing guest today to introduce to you. We'd like to introduce you to Paul Syng. Paul, how you doing, man? Thanks for joining.
Hey guys, what's up?
What up?
Oh, listen to that strong voice. Listen to that. Oh, the speaker setup, that bike in the background, the beautiful colors. Look, this guy's ready. He came to play, Shawn.
He's ready to rumble. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I just like to be humble with my setup. Just, basics only.
Truth be told, that's how I discovered you on your YouTube. I loved your breakdown of your setup, like how you use it for work, how it's practical. I like how you shaved your beard, but it looks like you've grown it back. So you're up a different level. The bikes looks amazing. Really cool.
I think the making the YouTube video was justification for spending all that money on this setup.
That's very true.
So for our audience out there, I wanted to take a minute to tell you a little bit about Paul. He has an extensive background, which we're going to have some fun today. So Paul is actually a creative director focused on sales, and he's helped win over $1 billion in business. He runs his very own brand and design agency in India, and he's worked with airlines, sports teams, clothing, hotels, you name it. And he's also been awarded the top 30 under 30 by Hindustan Times, which is the national paper. In addition to that, he's also written for GQ. He's orchestrated and co-founded music festivals. And he currently lives in Toronto, and he's an avid biker. So thanks again for joining us today, Paul.
Glad to be here, guys. I'm humbled.
No, absolutely. I mean, like I mentioned, I saw you on YouTube. That's where I first got some of your content. But your background, your story, I know you shared it on YouTube, but if you wouldn't mind giving us just some humble beginnings, because I loved your story of your childhood in school and then transitioning into your current love right now, and I want to unpack that. How you transition to different roles and different jobs. I want to hear that as well. But let's start with just give us some background. How did you realize you want to get into agency and maybe unpack it for us a little bit?
There's actually a few things. First is I was really bad at studies, really bad. Like I was thrown out of 5 different schools.
Wow.
And escorted out of a specific high school by a principal. So I had a really bad experience with schools and education and teachers and authority and following any rules. I would be in class just doodling and sketching. And my parents felt that, and their typical Asian parents, they were like, well, he's not going to be an engineer. So there goes our dreams out the window. But they did see that I was talented at sketching, drawing, and had the more artistic side. And only when I got into college, my parents were like, you know what, just do whatever you want. So I got into arts college. I got thrown out of arts college because, again, I have a problem with authority and following rules. And then after college, I met with this person at a wedding who used to run a PR firm. And he was actually retired from an international PR firm. And he was like the senior executive. He used to be like flying chartered flights to meet clients. And he was like a big shot. So I met him at a wedding, and he's like, he told me about advertising and marketing. And I'm like, oh my God, that's literally, it was so exciting and interesting to me. And he just got me hooked. And then I was like, can I just come over to your place and hang out with you? So I actually went to his place, had tea, and he used to call it chai. He's no more. He actually passed away 2-3 months ago.
Okay.
But he's been one of the biggest influence and mentors to me. But so he gave me the ins and outs and the birds and the bees of advertising and marketing. And from there, I actually got into this whole world of advertising and exposed to it. And once I went into my first advertising agency office, I was just like, this is home.
Yeah.
So that's like in a nutshell, with how it got into this space.
And no, that's amazing, because the fact that I like the fact that I'm not sure if I like the fact, but you called out that you realized there's a gap, that from a school education perspective, the things that you're studying, there was no interest, and your mind wouldn't focus and gravitate to that style of learning. But then the second thing I thought was amazing is the support from your parents to recognize, okay, maybe there's something else that could interest you. And then lastly, you found that mentor that said yes for you to come over. Because if he said no, he might have like, okay, well, I guess that stops that. But I want to understand, what was the interest? Like you said you doodled, but what was it that was what was sexy about it that piqued your interest as soon as you heard about it and he talked about it? Was there any things that people also can relate to say, oh yeah, I feel the same way?
Yeah. So I would break that down into a couple of things. Number one is I have like this whole theory on like education and learning that in India, and primarily the education system that we have now was designed for the Industrial Revolution, where we were just feeding into like an assembly line of engineers and all that stuff. So the practice of just having kids like memorize stuff and just spit it and vomit it out, like that did not turn my brain on at all. There's no curiosity, no questioning. It was just memorizing and rote learning. So that was a complete turnoff. And I was like, that's not for me. So I just said, hard stop, no. I didn't even attempt to write anything in my exams. I would just get a 0. Like people would have fear that, oh, you know what, I should at least study a little bit. I didn't even bother to do any of that. So my parents had a very tough time with me during my early years. Then as I was sketching and drawing, I would find myself back in those days, by the way, and we're from that generation, we used to have print newspapers, and we don't no longer have print. But back then, and my dad's a journalist, so we would get every single newspaper at our place because my dad would read and scan everything. So I would find myself staring and looking at ads more than reading the articles. But at the time, I didn't know what that was. I was just like, oh, it's an ad. Like I didn't know like who made it or what the whole story behind it. I was just fascinated by how ads were made. And India is like very innovative when it comes to advertising, especially because of such a huge diversity of people, mindsets, cultures, languages. So they push the boundaries quite a bit versus North America, which is more homogenous in its, the way they approach. It's like mostly centered around like football, sports, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so that's sort of where those early flavors of, my passion, I would lean towards those ads. I would like focus on how logos were made, how packaging would come, and at the time we weren't that well off. So, if some relative came from abroad to India, they would bring us like chocolates, and I would really examine the packaging and how it was so much
Interesting.
it was so premium, like even the matchboxes. So I was so fascinated by all of these things around me, and I was just generally very curious. I would like disassemble my dad's scooter, the car, which got me into a lot of trouble because you can't put that stuff back together
again.
Right.
Imagine my dad walks home one day and his brand new scooter, I've completely disassembled it just to see what's inside. And so he had like an LML Vespa. So we had to actually call a mechanic, and he had to, come and take all the parts in a cart and then go assemble it and bring it the scooter back.
Oh my goodness. You have loving parents.
Yeah, very, very, very supportive parents. I would not get, I'd get like a minor hand slap for doing these things. So yeah, so in my early childhood, I was very curious with technology, hardware, and doing stuff with my hands. And then when I met and I would constantly be doing artistic things. Like back then, I would make music albums and sell them to my friends, make cover art, hand paint T-shirts, make merch. So my friends would just pay me and be like, dude, could you make me a really cool hoodie and paint something cool, whatever you want. I'm like, okay. So those are like my very early days of just seeing how I could convert my talent into commerce and make money from it, that people actually valued my art. And so that kind of just reinforced, oh, this is actually something that I can actually pursue, and this would actually pay me and help me live sort of a decent lifestyle, hopefully one day.
Yeah.
So those are like basically like those very early again, I'm just saying, like giving you like different things that were happening simultaneously that led to that conversation with the guy from this PR firm.
I see a lot of creative in you, almost in your blood, in your bones, like deep in your soul, that kind of just lends to a natural curiosity of how things work and design, and that is because I don't have it. I admire it in you, so I think that's really, really cool. I'm intrigued now because it seems like it's been ingrained and part of you from such a young age, all the way to your successes now, and now to having an international presence and being supporting organizations across industries. How were you able to take this intrinsic curiosity, so to speak, and extend your brand and design, beyond industries and beyond borders even?
So just a quick, I think just to make sure that we have the facts correct. So I used to run an agency, but when I left India, I left the agency as well. Mm-hmm. But my partner's continuing to run that agency back home in India, and essentially, again, I've always had problem with authority and fitting into some sort of a mold. And when I basically did post-grad in marketing advertising in Mumbai. And after that, I was trying to look for a job. I couldn't find a job. And I was like, you know what, screw this. I'll just start my own agency. And at the time, people tell me that, oh, I'm not creative. They're like, you're more apt for account management, but creative's not your... I'm like, really? And so I was like, I'm not going to pay attention to what you're telling me. I'm just going to do what I want to do. And that kind of got me to starting my own agency, from where I started from the basement of my house, and slowly we built it up to 12 to 15 employees, and we had interns, and we would do all kinds of work, from not only doing work from clients, like, if there's like a hotel, restaurant from a hospitality industry, or textiles, or airlines, or sports teams, or even create our own IP, like music festivals. So we've done jazz festivals, we've done indie music festivals, and we would just do them from like a creation perspective versus somebody asking us to do something. And again, it was just out of curiosity and just for fun, and we wanted to explore what we could do and push the boundaries. And and not waiting for somebody to give us the permission or somebody to give us a brief. It was just like, let's self-initiate some of these projects. So they sort of took off. That's sort of like, again, the more high level of what was happening. And then at the time, even though I was an art person, I was always sketching, drawing. My dad's a journalist. So I would always find myself interested in how the copy and the ads were written, so the text and how there was like this whole concept of Mad Men era of long copy ads. And then you would have like a lot of text, no images. So that was like a really fascinating period. And I'll share some of that content with you guys, which you can, this famous copywriter called Neil French. And I'm a big fan of his work. Just like, it's really long copy ads. They're beautiful. They're so hard not to read all the way to the end. They're so well written. And so I would find myself writing, and I started writing some blogs, and I got discovered by GQ. And they're like, we really like the kind of stuff that you write. Could you write for us? And I'm like, sure. So again, I was just exposed by content that I was producing. Just like this podcast. You guys just kind of saw what I was doing and you thought, oh, this seems kind of cool. And I got invited to do this cool thing.
The coolest thing you've ever done so far, right?
Yeah. This is definitely one of those up there in the highlight reel.
Right. So now taking that to today. So you're here, Toronto. I've heard the story about you locating and looking for work, and then what you do now. Do you want to just describe that to the audience? Because I think it's a learning lesson, and as well as you gave some tips. You gave some really good sound bites on how you do what you do, and then we want to learn more about, now that you're in part of this agency, how do you get clients and things like that. So can you walk us through that?
Right. So what happens is anytime somebody moves to Canada, the first thing, if you want to get a job, unless you go down like a path of, doing your own thing, but if you want to get a job, every single company that you apply to will be like, do you have Canadian experience?
Yep.
And that is, how do you get Canadian experience if you don't have a job? So that's a bit of a catch-22. So when I moved here, I did some small freelance projects. And then what happened is that when I wanted like a more serious role, full-time role that could actually help me pay my bills also, because I was completely broke when I moved here. I don't want to get into like the whole like how I suck at finances and stuff. Just blew money at parties, cars.
Next interview.
Traveling. Yeah, but so when I moved here, I was basically broke, and I had to start from scratch. So I had all this experience in my belt under running my own agency, 15 person team, to working with the top tier clients in India, from airlines, sports teams, music festivals, all that stuff. And I thought when I moved here, I thought, with my experience, I should easily get a creative director job, like at the least, right? But when I applied, I was surprised that nobody would even revert to my emails or respond. I would just simply get, you've been rejected. I was like, okay. So what I did, I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe I need to do sort of a numbers game. So I used my skills basically. I put together 2-3 email templates, and I sat down on a weekend, had some wine, and put together a script, all the data of all the creative leaders in agencies, their emails and the emails of industry people. And I had a list of about 2,200 people. And I sent out that email template campaign to all these people. And within a week, I had 10 job interviews. And here, behold, I had the first job. And I started off as a senior designer. Now I'm a creative director.
Wow.
That's in very condensed form what happened. But yeah.
Power of good copy, really, to
yeah. And what would happen is that absolutely. And what would happen is that once people start working with me and see what I can do, then they totally get it. It's also because it's hard when you're hiring for a role. This is it's not got to do with me specifically, but this is just how the industry works, is that when you're trying to apply for a job, it's not about you. You have to think about when you're applying for a job, what is going on? What are the motions that the person who's trying to hire you, what are they going through? So they need to fulfill a certain skill set. They're missing that skill set in their team, right? And they want to fulfill that. So now if they see a resume where this person can do a whole bunch of things, either that's too good to be true and all of it is false. It's like, well, I can speak Portuguese, Spanish, French. I'm sure you've seen those memes. But at the time when you actually, so when that hiring person is looking at the resume, they want to see, they want to make a safe decision. They want to take the least amount of risk, right? And when they see a resume, they see, okay, this person can make a postcard, this kind of person can make a poster. That's exactly what we're looking for, right? Versus this person can do a whole bunch of stuff. So that seems a little bit risky. They're like, well, this seems exactly what we're looking for. So they'll go lean towards that. So essentially what you want to do is when you're trying to apply for a job, you want to become the most least risky option and the most safest option. And that increases your chance of getting hired to like 90%, 95%. Versus saying, I can just do everything. Which even if you can, you should not say that if you're applying for a job. Yeah, you want to avoid saying more and just really like remove all the stuff that you can do and just focus on the motions that the hiring person and the person who's going to be reading your resume going through.
And so, so today, is it you obtain new business by way of referral, or do you still send out copy to like in large campaigns or email blasts to people, or what? How do you flow now these days after that initial?
Right. So now that I work in a full-time role with an agency, I actually I work as a consultant with a very large professional services firm, which they have offices across the globe. And I basically work as part of, and I apply all the skills that I've learned in graphic design, branding, advertising, marketing, user experience design, design thinking, all of that stuff that I've learned, storytelling, copywriting, everything that you can think of. I applied in a very niche area, which is just sales, and thinking about, how do you go from a cold lead, or how do you build those conversations to a warm lead, or if it's already a warm lead, and how do you build that relationship to actually winning that business? And what does that look like in the RFP process? How do you design proposals? How do you design those conversations that lead to winning the business? And these deals are like 30 million, 50 million, 100 million. That's the worth of these deals that I work on. Wow. And so it's basically bringing design thinking and design and creativity to the sales process.
Can I understand more of those tactics? I'm asking for a friend. You share some tactics online on your channel. I love how you review tweets, which is pretty awesome. You review some books and you call out tactics there. Off camera, you're talking about that you ride your bike to get ideas, and I've also heard that you like to store ideas in certain manners. Is there ways that you can, or tools, maybe 2 or 3 that you can share with me? I won't tell anyone. that helps you with your agency in your current world, like anything that you now rely on quite a bit, that you use quite often.
Right. So because I come from like a more, you could call it, and this is how sort of designers and this industry sort of buckets people, because I would call myself more of like from the traditional side of like coming from advertising marketing, like that Mad Men style era of, that's kind of where I started off my journey as a traditional graphic design artist and writer and all that stuff. And going in from there to becoming more like an entrepreneur and understanding how the CEO thinks. So if you want to be, as a designer and as somebody who wants to be really good at sales, is you want to think about everything that you have to offer. So let's say if you are a designer, you're a motion designer, you're a writer, whoever you are, and or you have a product, whatever that is, and you want to sell it to someone, you want to give your service to someone, you want to think about how is that thing relevant to that person? Is it even relevant to that person? And what would they value? So that's like the top layer that you would probably hear from everyone. So what we try to do is go a little bit deeper than that. We say, okay, firstly, selling, this whole idea of selling is so many negative connotations around selling. And people see, oh, I'm actually a scientist. I'm not a salesperson. Or I'm a designer. I'm not a salesperson. Or, you know, I make really cool, what do you call it? Music. But I'm not a salesperson. But ultimately, you have to find the commerce meets creativity. Because if in the absence of one, you know, you really don't have any product. So what we typically do is I specifically work with subject matter experts who are really smart at what they do. They could be engineers, data scientists, people who are really good at like human resource transformations, all kinds of like really complex solution architecture and software based, hardware based, you know, and these are like large scale transformations. And I'd say, okay, so, you know, you have all this complex knowledge and understanding and you're passionate about what you do, but how can you communicate all this complexity to somebody who's doesn't understand this taxonomy? You know, they're like, I just want to solve my problem. I have a ache here, and you come in and say all these fancy words, they're going to be lost. They're like, but how does this fix this ache that I have? You know, so there's a client's looking for, let's say, for example, a client's looking for, how do I increase my sales? You know, how do I get more people to walk into my coffee shop? One client could be, you know, how do I sell more tickets to my music festival, right? Another person could be, you know, how do I get my employees to feel a certain way about my company? A perception problem, right? So, and if you say, oh, I can just make some posters for you, you're like, you're not connecting the dots for them. So the one main thing I would say, and the basis of all that I'm saying here is that we have to begin to ask questions, be more curious, stop being solutions oriented. And so, you know, there's this saying, which is strong opinions held loosely. All that is curiosity over conclusions. So if you think about it, is held loosely is the curiosity, and strong opinions is the conclusions. And if you're constantly having conversations with clients, just be curious longer, just ask more questions, because once you get to the root cause of what's hurting them, what are they really trying to do, then you can start building a solution in collaboration with them on that. And that's like, it's so simple in its approach, but 99.9% of people just don't do it. That is the main difference, is when you go in to a conversation, if you're a graphic designer and you're a writer, you have a really complex software solution, whatever that thing is, you go and sit in front of the prospective buyer, and you know, you're talking to them. In your mind, there could be two things happening. You could be thinking curious, okay, let me ask why, tell me more. Or you could be like, how is this going to fit into what I do? You know, and that's the difference. In your brain, what's the conversation that's happening? Either you're thinking, how does this fit into a poster? You know, because that's typically how even agency people become, you know, because they think, oh, well, we only do, you know, videos and we only do print. And how can we solve this problem with video and print? Versus saying, you know, this client has a very complex e-commerce problem. It's actually going to be solved by banner ads, for example, right? That would be the solution. So people are driven by what their limited capabilities are versus what the client actually needs, or versus what the buyer actually needs. So it's like, you go to a doctor and the doctor's like, well, I'm not a dentist. So how can I solve this tooth problem even though I'm a cardiologist, right? So people are so limited in, like, they have blinders on. They think more from the lens of what they can do and what their capabilities are versus what the client and the buyer actually needs. So it's actually thinking, not selling, but helping. So that's a big mindset shift. It's so simple. This is not rocket science, but this is literally the difference between somebody who makes $15 an hour, $5 an hour to somebody who makes $1,000 an hour.
I feel like you just put $10,000 in our pockets, man. Just that knowledge there on the real, man. That is some deep, profound knowledge. It's actually causing me to rethink my approach on the user, the customer, or the potential customer.
Yeah.
I have a question for you though, and this is going back, to our days as kids running around. Could grown-up, extremely knowledgeable and experienced Paul, if there's a message you could share with young Paul running around, what would you say to that person?
I would say keep being more curious and don't worry about asking for permission, and don't worry about like getting any grades, good grades. Like don't worry about school and education. Unless you want to be like an engineer or go to space and do all that stuff, you might need to have some formal education if you want to be a doctor. But for anything else, you can just learn on your own, go at your own pace, and don't worry about any of that other stuff, and you'll be fine.
Wow.
That's what I would say.
Now, what would you say? That's awesome, by the way. Thank you for that. What would you say to your future self now? Like, what's the next step for you?
My future self is, so the thing is that this is a bit of a thing that I'm constantly self-reflecting and introspecting on these days, is that there's a lot of things that I wanted to achieve when I was in college, when I was a kid, that I wanted to have my own agency one day, not have an agency to be specific, but to be doing my own thing, be successful at it, be known by, people around me, by peers, by my friends, that I'm successful in what I'm doing. And to achieve certain things, I had certain milestones. So I did all of that. So now I have to kind of figure out what's my new North Star. And so I haven't figured that out. So I'm just on this beautiful journey because all the things that I had in my mind, I sort of achieved. And now it's like, I'm trying to push myself and challenge myself in different directions. And so I'm still trying to figure out what my new North Star has to be. So I'm working on that right now. I don't have an answer, to be honest.
So that's cool, man. I'm intrigued to follow your story and continue following it. And now I'm wondering how people can follow you, and learn more and more about your journey.
So I basically make TikTok videos and YouTube videos, but everywhere my social handle is Paul Syng, PaulSyng, and it's the only name that exists on Earth. And so if you put in Paul Syng into Google, I'm the only person that will come up.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's opposite than me. I have to say Creed because there's so many Carl Reids. So that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah. So if you basically put in Paul Syng, you'll see a whole litter of stuff that I've done, from Twitter to YouTube, but I'm most active on Twitter and YouTube. When
you get to that point where that true North Star, I'm assuming you're going on your bike ride, and then you hit that North Star, and you realize, okay, I'm at this stage. I realize what I'm going to do now. Can you hit us up so we can talk to you then, and talk and follow you on your journey and hear you and come back on our podcast? Can we hear more about this?
I'm so humbled that you would want to be part of that conversation. But yeah, absolutely, I would love to do that.
Of course, I want to know. I want to know when you hit this stage. You're like, okay, I got another North Star. Let me talk about it. I want to hear about it. Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on our show.
I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. Hopefully, the people listening got some value out of it. And if anybody wants to know more, you can always hit me up, and I can go deeper into any specific question, challenge that you might be having, and happy to answer those.
Right on. Cool, man. Okay, it's cool.
Yeah.
So definitely appreciate it, Paul. It's been awesome getting a chance to learn more about you and everything. And Carl, of course, it's been a peach, brother.
You too, man. Always. Good to chat to you.
You too. And for our audience out there, we just want to say again, stay cool, everybody. And, Remember, you can live your life as is, or you can chase a dream of where you want your future to be. Peace.
Peace.